Oh, hello, and welcome to what we're talking about with Jamie Jakes. I am him. NFL fantasy football's ADP is absolutely broken. Here's how to exploit it. So the reason you're watching this is you probably have an NFL app platform fantasy football draft coming up. Congratulations to you. It's the best time of year when we're drafting these fantasy football teams. Everybody's undefeated and everyone's having a good time. So cheers to you and cheers to me, because we're going to talk about how we are going to get you to win that fantasy football league with these amazing values in ADP. ADP, of course, stands for average draft position. It is the rank or the value associated with every player that can be drafted in fantasy football. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go round by round, and I'm going to combine my personal rankings and the sharpest app on fantasy football, Underdog Fantasy Football, and compare them to what the NFL ADP is. I've been getting a lot of questions about why we're using Underdog Fantasy Football. The reason is because it's the best, sharpest historically ADP, and the reason it's historically sharp is because every draft has money behind it. At least $3 behind every draft that is done in the Underdog platform. So the ADP isn't determined by people who's doing mock drafts or home leagues. There are professionals doing these drafts every single day, and they're setting the ADP. It's not perfect. No ADP is perfect, but the Underdog ADP is historically pretty reliable. Now, the Underdog ADP and my ADP is based off 3 wide receiver or 2 flex. So if you're in 2 flex, you're basically in a 3 wide receiver league. If you can start 4 wide receivers each week, you're in a 3 wide receiver, 1 flex, or a 2 flex league. If your league is 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, it will bump up the value of some of those running backs. Not really going to matter to you either way because of the way we're going to attack this strategy. So let's get right into it with round 1. Round 1, the only real landmine you have to be aware of is Saquon going 10 overall on NFL. He's going 18th in Underdog, which is about where I have him ranked as well. I would highly recommend trying to get a top tier running back, maybe 2 in the first 2 rounds, because after that, the wide receiver values later on in the 4th round and later are insane. If you have the option to choose where you're drafting from, I would either go first overall and get yourself some Christian McCaffrey, or go somewhere in the middle and hope you can land a Breece Hall or a Bijan Robinson, who are going 7th and 8th. So I would go 1, or I would go 6. If you are towards the end of the 1st round, I think Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs is a great option for you to either draft like a Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua in the early or in the late 1st round, and then get an early 2nd round, whichever running back falls to you. Some other 2nd round guys you can get in case of emergency is Kyron Williams and Pacheco, kind of going in the middle of that 2nd round. Some great values in the 2nd round. Wide receiver position, Garrett Wilson going 13 versus 10. I love Garrett Wilson. I think he might just have like an 1,800-yard breakout season now that he's finally got a quarterback throwing the football. Some landmines you do need to be aware of. Do not draft Derrick Henry, 16 versus 30th overall on Underdog. ETN, same thing. I wouldn't be targeting him, 20 versus 40 on Underdog. Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, 23-24 in the end of that 2nd round. They're going 38 and 43 respectively. So I would definitely stay away from the Chiefs. Those are the highest rankings I've seen for Mahomes and Kelce across all platforms. So 1st, 2nd round, hopefully you have at least 1 running back. 2 would probably honestly be better. If you can get 2 kind of hero running backs and just don't worry about it until the 8th, 9th, 10th round, I think that's a great way to approach these drafts depending on how it falls to you. Obviously, don't let guys like Garrett Wilson fall into the early 2nd round. Because in the 3rd round, you do have one more shot at the running back position, Devin Achane. He's a little bit too expensive for me. In Underdog, he's going 20th overall, but getting him at 30 in the 3rd round in your NFL leagues, I think is a fine value to get him. He could blow up on the scene, and he's a guy who can definitely win you some weeks with 1 or 2 big breakout runs. Deebo Samuel is an amazing value here. With the Ayuk situation, maybe Ayuk has a little bit of slow start to the season after he missed all of camp. Maybe he has a soft tissue injury like a hamstring early on when he's ramping back up into full participation, assuming he's even with the 49ers. As I'm recording right now, he is not re-signed yet. CeeDee Lamb just got re-signed, so we'll see about that. A big landmine you do need to be aware of, though, Rachaad White, 33 versus 59 on Underdog. And that's about where I have him a little bit lower than that, even in my personal rankings. Inefficient last year. I really think somebody from that backfield is going to start taking snaps from Rachaad White. It's not just going to be the Rachaad White show, 3 down back like he was last year. To be fair to him, though, new center, maybe he's a little bit more efficient as a runner, great as a passer. So in full PPR, he's obviously be ranked a little bit higher. But in half PPR formats, which is what we're talking about right now, I would definitely not recommend taking Rachaad White there in the 3rd round. In the 4th round, you just got to take one of these wide receivers. So Jalen Waddle, DK Metcalf, even if Debo and Achane are gone in the 3rd round, go ahead and reach on these guys and get Jalen Waddle or DK. Jalen Waddle, 44 versus 19 on Underdog. So he's going early 2nd round, and I love getting him there at a per route run basis. Jalen Waddle was extremely efficient last season. Is a little bit banged up, and I get it, could be banged up again this year. But for the most part, had a pretty clean camp in terms of injury. He sat out a couple of days with something that sounded like a undisclosed, like tightness sort of thing. So nothing to be too concerned about there. Same thing with DK Metcalf, 46 versus 29. DK could just be, I think he will be a top 10 wide receiver in the league this year. So that 29 is a little bit lower in the rankings than my personal rankings have them. So at this point, hopefully you have 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and you can do whatever you need to in the 5th round. A couple of landmines to be aware of. Alvin Kamara, he's going in the 5th round. He's going 72 overall versus 49 on NFL. DJ Moore, great value, 50th overall. He's going 31, and I think that's way too low on Underdog. DJ Moore, I believe, has top 10 potential. He caught for almost 1,400 yards with Justin freaking Fields throwing the football. And you think Caleb Williams, who's supposed to be the second coming of Andrew Luck, everyone said it since he was in high school, is going to be worse as a passer than Justin Fields. DJ Moore, barring injury, I think has an incredible, another breakout season, 1,200 yards plus, which is really all you need. First shot at the quarterback position here in the 5th round. DJ Moore is a guy you're probably not going to have to reach on him because you got DK and Jalen Waddle going in the 4th. But if those guys are gone, you're in a sharp room. Go ahead and reach on DJ Moore in the 4th and grab yourself some Anthony Richardson, going 52 overall on NFL, 57 on UD. Kincaid also can be your first tight end taken. If you take a Kincaid in the 5th round, or pretty much any of the tight ends that I'm going to talk about through this whole video, you're kind of done in that position for virtually all home leagues, unless you have some crazy settings, which if you do, leave some comments in the section and we'll kind of hash it out there strategy-wise. But you got Kincaid, and you also have Pitts in this round. Kincaid lost some target competition over there in Buffalo. I don't see a lot of those guys really competing with Kincaid in terms of targets over there. And Pitts, same thing, new quarterback, better situation. He's going 57 versus 61, so about flat for both of these guys, appropriately priced. And if you need your first tight end, or if one of them fall into the 6th round, snatch them up when other people are taking kickers. Another big name to be aware of in the 5th round, Neighbors, 59 versus 24. So admittedly, it's a little bit difficult for me to justify a quarterback or a tight end pick here when you can get Neighbors in the 5th round. So hopefully, somebody takes him before you can grab him. But Neighbors would be on the top of my hit list along with DJ Moore in this neck of the woods. But if they're both gone, or if one of those guys fall out of the 5th round, Kincaid, Pitts, or Anthony Richardson, go ahead and take them there. In the 6th round, more wide receiver value. Tank Dell, 61 on NFL, 34th overall in Underdog. A decent value here. It is technically a full round of a reach, but I think it's appropriate here in the NFL platform. If you just totally missed on the running back position, or you want to just be done with it for the rest of the draft, Aaron Jones, in case of emergency, he's going 82 overall on Underdog, 70 on NFL. I think that's a fine pick to make, where you're getting him here in the 6th round. If you do have a wide receiver room that's just full up already, you already went like 4 wide receivers, you don't need Tank Dell on your team, take Aaron Jones. You'll be happy with it. This is hilariously so apparently where kickers are starting to go in the 6th round of these drafts. And the kickers that are going early, in at least in terms of according to 4for4, where I'm getting all my numbers from, Kickers going in the 6th round doesn't make any sense. Even if you have super juiced up kicker points, like you're getting like 12 points or something for a 50-yard field goal, still doesn't make any sense. Don't be drafting kickers in the 6th round unless you have like a 2-3 kicker league. Just doesn't make sense whatsoever. Even if you have juiced up kicker numbers, I wouldn't even think about taking a kicker until the 13th round. Same thing with defense, around 12 or 13. And the 3 defenses that I really like this year because they have a good start to their schedule is Browns, even though they have the Cowboys week 1. After that, they have a pretty easy schedule through 5 weeks. Raiders have an incredibly easy schedule. You can just draft the Raiders. If they're okay defensively, you can start them for like the first 8 weeks of the season. It's kind of crazy. And same thing with the Steelers. You can start them pretty reliably for the first 6 weeks of the season and not have to worry about it. So if you can get one of those guys, one of those teams, go ahead and grab them. If not, don't worry about it too much. Getting into the 7th round here, Keenan Allen, 78 overall on NFL, 58 on Underdog. He is falling significantly just because camp reports. I think it's total overreaction to limited preseason snaps, very limited effort out of Keenan Allen in those snaps, in my opinion. I would definitely not worry about any of that. Keenan Allen, if Rashee Rice is off the board, which we'll talk about in the 8th round, definitely reach on Rashee Rice here in round 7 or round 6. He's not going to be suspended, in my opinion. From everything that we're hearing, he's going to have clear path to a top 20 season, and you're getting him here allegedly in the 7th round. I would, especially if you have a somewhat competent, a somewhat sharp league that you're in, people are going to be aware of Rashee Rice. It's not going to be a secret anymore. I'm happy taking him 2-3 rounds ahead of time. So in the 5th round, I'd start looking for Rashee Rice. And that's ahead of virtually everybody I talked about for the 5th and the 6th round. So get your good values on them, but Rashee Rice in the 7th round, a great option. Keenan Allen, also a great option in that round. And this is when defenses are starting to go. And I don't know if this is just like a glitch in the system or what, but the first 2 defenses, according to the NFL, is Bears and Bengals. I don't know if they just had a bunch of fantasy drafts in those cities and that's why those teams are elevated, or I don't know. I don't know why in the world they would be that elevated. They're not good defenses. So stay away from Bears and Bengals. Go with the guys that I discussed in that kind of 12th, 13th round range. In round 8, Najee Harris is pretty flat, especially with Jaylen Warren having a little bit of a hamstring issue. Now, reportedly, he's going to be ready week 1, ready to go week 1. But Najee Harris, I think great value where you're getting him here. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Get your 1 or 2 running backs early. If Najee Harris is your second running back on your team, you're going to be fine. Don't worry about it, especially if you followed my other advice, getting those wide receivers. Worst case scenario is you'll have to do a little bit of work trading one of your elite wide receivers in week 2 or 3 for a running back that someone overpaid for. Rashee Rice, like we just discussed, is going 42 overall on Underdog, 88. So he is like double value in the NFL platform at the moment and rising. Another good value, in my opinion, he's a little bit lower in Underdog, and I think it's a mistake. Tony Pollard, I think, is going to be the bell cow for admittedly a rough offense, but that's kind of in the cards already, kind of calculated into this ADP. He's going 89 on NFL, 102 on Underdog, and I'm totally fine with reaching on him there for your second or third running back on your team if your wide receiver room is already stacked, which it should be if you've watched this video. Also important note in that round, reach on Xavier Worthy if you don't need a running back in the 8th round. Reach on Xavier Worthy. He's currently going in the 9th round. He's probably going to be the number 2 target over there. He had like 24% target share when Patrick Mahomes was on the field, and he ran basically every single route when Patrick Mahomes was on the field in preseason. He was kind of the number 1 guy there, or behind Rashee Rice in terms of targets on day 1 in OTAs. He was drafted there to be that guy, the field stretcher. I don't think Kelsey or Rashee Rice are much target competition for him because they basically play the opposite position. They're receivers at the end of the day, but Xavier Worthy is the field stretcher. He's going to be the deep route guy on the football field, and it's going to open up a lot of passing lanes for Travis Kelsey and Rashee Rice. It's just going to be an absolutely horrible offense to try and defend. And if Patrick Mahomes has a 5,000-yard passing season, which I'm kind of expecting him to have, Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy is going to have like 1,400 yards. So getting him in the 8th round with a reach is absolutely great. Again, 7th round of Rashee Rice is gone. Get yourself some Xavier Worthy. You're not going to regret it by the end of the season, I don't think. So getting into the 9th round, like we said, Xavier Worthy, 100 versus 55 on underdog. So again, like a double 2x value basically there. And some quarterbacks. So, I've not really mentioned a lot of quarterbacks. They're a little bit too expensive for me early on outside of Anthony Richardson. If someone falls, you want to create a stack, that's fine. Do what you got to do what you like to do. But Jaden Daniels, Jared Goff in the 9th round, I think is too good of a value to pass up on. 104 versus 96, and Jared Goff is 107 versus 125. So not great value on Jared Goff, but I'm a believer in him. He's a little bit higher up in my rankings. And Jaden Daniels, you're just getting a hell of a value there. If Jaden Daniels just stays healthy through the whole season, it's going to be a smash value because he's going to run the football for 800, 900 yards this year. So even if he struggles as a passer with Scary Terry still there, it's not really going to matter in terms of fantasy football production. Win-loss record might not look great, but those fantasy points will look great at the end of the season. Another option at running back in the 9th round, Devin Singletary, which is just another reason to reach on Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, because you kind of want these Tony Pollard, Najee Harris, Gus Edwards, Devin Singletary in the 8th and 9th round, and you only get one pick. So I would go ahead and do that. Or if you have the option to just trade back out of like the 6th and 7th round and stock up with a lot of picks here in the 8th and 9th round, because there's a lot of good values here. Devin Singletary will be the number one there, the bell cow there. I think he's good at football. I think that kind of gets not talked about enough. And I think the Giants think he's good at football. He's going to get the ball a lot. What if the Giants are just like a slightly better offense with Malik Neighbors now in the squad and Daniel Jones back to being healthy and confident? Gus Edwards, more of the same thing. LA, a little bit of a reach in terms of ADP, like a full round reach. But again, he's higher up in my rankings than the underdog rankings are. And Gus Edwards, 108 versus 120 on underdog, I think is a great option. Even if he's just your second running back on your roster, getting him in the 9th round, as long as you have a guy from the 1st through 3rd round, like worst case scenario, you have Achane, and then you have Gus Edwards, you're sitting pretty. And worst case scenario, you're hunting on the waivers in week 1, which is what we're going to be doing anyway. So go ahead and grab Gus Edwards as a little bit of a sleeper breakout candidate here in the 9th round. And in the 10th round, which is the final round I'll cover here on this video, Zach Moss, great value. I think he'll be the number 1 in Cincinnati. And if that's the case, if he earned that bell cow role or the goal line role in Cincinnati for what I assume will be a good offense, assuming Joe Burrow stays healthy, Zach Moss is just going to be Joe Mixon, but probably a little bit better. I think he's better than Joe Mixon at football in terms of like fantasy football. Maybe Joe Mixon's better pass block or whatever. I don't care. I don't get points for that. I think Zach Moss is going to score a lot more fantasy points than Joe Mixon will this year in his new landing spot down there in Houston. Another quarterback you can grab here, Tua, is a great value, pretty flat from both platforms in terms of the difference in ADP. But a better value, in my opinion, Caleb Williams. So if you did get Keenan Allen, DJ Moore early on, pair him up with Caleb Williams and go ahead and reach on him into the 9th round, I would say, just to make sure you got him. Caleb Williams, I think, is going to run the ball a lot more. I try not to read too much into how the guys look in preseason when who knows is chasing after him. But Caleb Williams looked a little bit faster than I was expecting him to look on a football field. And at the end of the day, speed is speed. And I think it might carry over into the NFL. And if he is a guy who's getting 500 rushing yards a season on top of over 4,000 passing yards, which is kind of what I'm projecting him to do in this really good offense, sky's the limit for Caleb Williams. He could be top 5 quarterback year 1, no problem. So if you did spend a premium draft pick on one of his receivers, get Caleb Williams in the 10th round. Brian Thomas, probably the best value numbers wise. He's going 71 overall in underdog. He's going 137 on the NFL platform. There's really no reason to be super concerned about Brian Thomas at this ADP, at this value. I would be fine if you wanted to reach on him a little bit. 137 versus 71 on underdog. Brian Thomas was running ahead of Christian Kirk in 2 wide receiver sets in preseason. I expect that to kind of not necessarily hold true, but they're running him there for a reason. He's going to be probably the number 2 target over there in Jacksonville. It might take till week 3 or 4 to pan out, but if he's your 5th or 6th wide receiver on your roster, who cares, right? I'll stash him. I'll hold on to him. Do not cut Brian Thomas if he has a first 3 or 4 bad weeks of the season. Rashee Rice last year, for example, he took until about week 5 to break out. And I expect maybe Brian Thomas to project in the same manner. Okay. So don't panic on him if he's not producing right away. Drop somebody else when you're doing these waiver pickups in your home leagues. Matt Stafford, great quarterback value here if you did end up with Puka at the end of the first round or if he fell into the second round. I think that's great. Just pair him with Matt Stafford, 138 versus 146. And another good, tasty little value here, kind of like a free sleeper for you. Jerome Ford, Nick Chubb is out. Sounds like one of their running backs from the Colts, whose name escapes me, is starting on IR. Dante Foreman is going to be kind of like the number 2 there. I don't think he's going to threaten Jerome Ford too much. Jerome Ford was good last year. And what a lot of people forget is that offensive line, everyone thinks Cleveland Browns offensive line, best offensive line in the league. Well, they were pretty banged up last year. By the end of the season, they had like nobody outside of Joel Bitonio starting for them who started the season with them. So getting Jerome Ford here, who I think will be better on a per touch basis than he was last year. I think Nick Chubb isn't going to be full go until like week 8. So, and Jerome Ford's still going to be involved on the team when Nick Chubb does come back. When players come back from bad knee injuries, of course, they're going to ramp them up correctly, but still increased risk for soft tissue injuries, calf, hamstring, groin, that we see in the preseason a lot when the players are getting in shape. That could happen too. And you could just have a bell cow in Jerome Ford with a great offense, with a great offensive line for basically the whole season. So getting him here in the 10th round, great value, especially if you faded the running back position early on, because he'll give you that first 6 to 8 weeks of the season of great opportunity in terms of touches and touchdown opportunity. And you can find somebody else off waivers later on in the season if Nick Chubb does truly kind of take over like we're all expecting him to. And that's it for the episode. If you would like to see kind of what goes on round 11 definitely check out my channel for my sleeper episode where I go through my 10 favorite sleepers. I don't think I talked about too many of them here outside of, I think, Gus Edwards and Jerome Ford was on that list in the video. So check that out for your late round picks. Don't take your defense or your kicker until round 13 or 14. And on this platform, there's still great values to get guys I didn't talk about yet. So go ahead and check out that video. Thank you for watching. I have also done the same video for the sleeper platform for Yahoo and for CBS. So if you or one of your friends has one of those drafts coming up, make sure to check out that video as well, because it is very, very different from platform to platform. CBS was wild. So if you want to be a little bit entertained, I think that would be the most entertaining one to watch, just so you can kind of see what the ADPs on that platform are all about. I don't know if anybody still uses that platform. I guess we'll see if anybody watches that episode, but that's a good one to watch. So please share it. If you liked it, please share it with a friend. If you didn't like it, share it with an enemy, and leave a comment below, leave a question for anything that you have. I will definitely get back to you really, really quickly. So check your bell icon on your YouTube app. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.